All right, Professor Ilan Troen taught at Brandeis University, and he was at Ben Gurion University. And tragically, over the weekend, his daughter and son-in-law were murdered by gunmen from Gaza on Saturday. Debbie Shahar Troen Matthias and her husband, Shlomi Matthias. Ilan, thank you for speaking to me.
Not at all. Thank you for
my heartfelt sympathy.
I
just cannot imagine experiencing what you are going through right now.
And may you never experience it.
Can you tell me what happened? I mean, what do you know?
Yes, what I know is that it was a pogrom, a classic pogrom. This was not a military campaign. What it was is an act, an event that was well rehearsed, well funded, practiced over a considerable period of time with the object of attacking civilians. It was not military against military. And what distinguished those civilians is that they are of a different faith and identity. That is the classic kind of pogrom that drove my forebearers from Eastern Europe to the United States, and Jews everywhere and other peoples to other places when they were attacked for who they happened to have been.
And I don't think anybody with any heart and any sense and any morality can understand any of this when there are innocent people, so many in the hundreds that were targeted by Hamas. And as you say, these are not military targets. Can you tell me what happened to Debbie? Where was she?
She was in her home. She had chosen to live in a beautiful, bucolic community, and it is a community, it is a kibbutz that is right on the border with Gaza. To get it in a mental map, the Gaza Strip goes down to Egypt. It is one settlement above the border with Egypt, Gaza, and Israel. And they turned what was used to be a desert into a veritable garden of orchards, green fields, and agriculture, and some manufacturing. A community of several hundred people, and who expected to live their lives well there. Now, they knew there was danger, but they couldn't help but believe that somehow accommodation could be made and they could live there safely and bring up their children in peace.
What occurred? What do you know?
What I know is that at 6:30 in the morning, we began getting pings. This is my cell phone. On my cell phone, like most people in Israel, I have an app that lets me know if missiles are being fired at Israel. At 6:30 in the morning on Saturday, it started going ping, 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 ping. And then shortly thereafter, we got a telephone call from Deborah saying is that I can hear Arabic around. There is shooting in my section of the kibbutz, and I hear glass breaking. What they did was try to secure the doors, including the door to their safe, so-called safe room. But those who came to attack them were very well prepared and were very well rehearsed. And they came with explosives to blow open doors. And so their safe room didn't provide the kind of security they anticipated or wanted. And in came the terrorists, and we were on communications. What you have to understand is this is not a traditional historic war of soldiers against soldiers. And in the modern period, everybody has a cell phone. We were audio witnesses to everything that took place, like tens of thousands of other Israelis. It was awful. So we could hear, she explained that they were under attack. And after she said that, she didn't say anything until some time later, when her son Rotem, who survived, thanks to her throwing her body on top of him and buffeting, the bullet that went through her and only slightly pierced him. And he said, "Hey, Metu, they're dead." Stop for a second. And then we were in touch with him, together with a chat that was built with all the family from the southern part of Israel to the Galilee. And people with different skills offered different kinds of advice. At one time, there was a physician online with him explaining, that he was going to be okay. There was a trauma specialist, his aunt, who had dealt with the victims of terror in the past and post-trauma individuals, who gave him advice how to breathe. He was told where and how to hide. Voice communications ended after the first one, and everything was done by texting because he was told not to use his voice. The day ended when he had 4% left in his battery. And that's when he was rescued by the Israeli army.
They were, Rotem was there waiting how many hours for help?
About 12 hours. He spent the day in hiding and bleeding somewhat, and initially under the blood of his parents.
Why would these gunmen, and it may seem like an obvious answer, but why would these gunmen shoot Debbie?
Because she is Jewish, because she is Israeli, and because she lives proximate to the Gaza border. She's an accessible target, and she is of the wrong identity.
How do you come to terms with?
Find another reason, I'd be happy to know it. What other reason could there be? They don't know her. Some could have known her. She made it a point, she and her husband Shlomi, who happened to be peace activists, they sent their children to an Arab Jewish school where the learning was in Arabic and in Hebrew, where they celebrated each other's festivals out of a belief that better understanding can foster accommodation and maybe eventually peace. There is no direct correlation between one's actions or justice and the outcomes. It's a phenomenon of our times, maybe of all times.
There are many Israelis.
Excuse me?
There are many Israelis
who engage in this,
have supported peace, who want to come to some kind of peaceful terms with Palestinians. But surely even the most modern liberal Israeli at this point, at this moment, must have a hard time thinking that they can reach anything conciliatory levels with Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
Yes and no. We're living also in the age when, against the traditions of many Muslims, Sadat came to Jerusalem and came in peace, and for which he lost his life. Where Hussein has a peace treaty with Israel, where there are the Abraham Accords, where we at my university, Ben Gurion University, large numbers of Arab students, 50% of the pharmacists in Israel are Arabs. 20-something% of the students of the Technion are Arabs. There doesn't necessarily have to be enmity. One has to work at it. It has to come from both sides. But there is no kind of deterministic, at least in my understanding and in my life experience, deterministic opposition between Arabs and Jews or people of any faith. I imagine that there are even Jews living in York these days. Things can change. Each and every great tradition, monotheistic tradition, has within it multiple strands. What we're dealing with in the leadership of Gaza, who belong to a particularly noxious and deviant variant within the richness of Islamic civilization. Jews have done very well if discriminated against and held as dhimmis, as a secondary people within the Islamic world for 14 centuries. We Zionists never imagined that we would have any borders, that there would be walls between us and our neighbors. We came back to live in the world from which we had come. Most of Jewish history, most of the Jews in the world until the 16th century lived around the Mediterranean and particularly in the Arab-speaking world.
You speak of Hamas as being this strand, this deviant strand. Do you have a wish now in terms of what should happen? I mean, what the Israeli government should do to fix this?
I don't know. I think the choices, that's why I'm only a professor and a historian. I write about the past. I'm not a policy person, but I know it's very difficult. And it's very difficult because what they did do was take hostages, infants, children, and people who are older than I am, denying them their rights. Older people without medications, without visitation rights, being publicly humiliated in public, people who talk, and if they talk about human rights, contravention of human rights as we know them, they came to do this consciously. So I don't know. They're clearly using their population as a human shield, not just us, but they assume that we will not put their population in risk. I don't know to what extent that will be valid, because there comes a point, what do you sacrifice in terms of your own safety at the cost of actually doing injury to another? That's a question I'm not prepared to talk about today, because I don't want to speak out of anger, and I can't speak out of knowledge. I imagine that due care will be given, and whatever due means out of due care, but something will be done. Injury will take place, and it is unavoidable.
Do you feel let down by the Israeli intelligence community because your daughter wasn't protected and your
Yeah,
son-in-law wasn't? In the end, they weren't protected, and nobody knew this was coming, and they should have.
they should have. They should have. I can remember at one time when visiting with them, they only live, 40 something minutes, 50 minutes away from us. And that we came to visit, and kind of jokingly says, we hear scratching underneath the ground. It was the period when Hamas was building tunnels, which we developed machinery for identifying and methods of inhibiting, stopping, obstructing. But I don't know. I don't know what can be done, but something will be done. Right now, it's to punish the whole population. Will that have an effect? I can only hope so.
Can I leave you with one last question?
Sure.
What was Debbie like? And did you ever ask her to move from there? And
No,
what was she like? Why did she want to stay there?
no. All my children have served in the army. I moved to Israel and having 6 children in the state of Israel, not wanting to support 6 orphans gave me an exemption. I volunteered for the army. This is the risk. This is part of the deal. If you live here, you pay your taxes, you go to work, you vote, not necessarily for the government, and you do your duties as a citizen. When all of my children and all of my grandchildren come of age, and there are several now, indeed, around Gaza with the forces that have assembled there, is you do what you have to do. And what we have to do is defend this state. It's a very precious entity, for all sometimes of its inadequate and failing leadership, who do make mistakes, wrong calculations, as in this case. It's still our leadership, it's our country, and we feel very, very, very tied to it. That's why she chose to live on the land, not in Tel Aviv as a musician and as an artist. Her husband was a terrific artist, a wonderful singer. And but they wanted to live on the land, and not in London, not in Mayfair, but they wanted to live way out in the country and be part of the people who've come to settle and make their lives here. So she has no regrets, I am sure. And I have to say, I say this with heartbreak, neither do I.
Ilan Troen, Ilan, thank you for sharing your thoughts with me, and very best to your 16-year-old grandson. I hope his recovery goes exceptionally well, and he will have to live with this, but I know he's got the guidance of a grandfather who seems pretty wise and can help him hold on and think about the best thing in his parents. Thank you so much.
Thank you.